to a place where none of that exists. So
Yeah.
I give you credit for having basically remade yourself without having, I guess, done a lot of research into someone who can do what you do. That's really wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. And I think the research that I did was actually on myself, because what is it now? 21 years ago is when I started, and I just kept going as often and as much as I can to be able to do this and have something that's repeatable, and that's part of it. So with Clear, Calm, and Open, that particular is a formula that works for everybody. However, not everybody is as interested in being ready, like you said, to have their connections. So for me, let's say that if I need 100% clear and 100% calm and 100% open, there's only certain times that I actually commit and actually have that and do it. But it's a mechanism that we use to say, hey, I'm ready. I'm okay now. The other part about this that I thought was important is that I don't want anyone to think that you have to be in a certain kind of meditation or Zen state or whatever it is like that. You don't. Whatever you are comfortable with in Clear, Calm, and Open, you could be out fishing. You could be out doing anything that you want. A calm body can be active, but for a lot of people, it is important to be in a safe place and in a calm type atmosphere. But it's not necessary. So the further that you go with your trying and your abilities, the more it will happen in every case. And I do want to clarify something that's pretty important. There are literally two things that I kind of classify this way. There are certain times in an emergency situation, whether it's in bad weather like in North Carolina, whether it's in somebody's trying to rob you or steal you or hurt you. In those cases, you don't have to be clear, calm, and open. The message is coming through. So in an emergency situation, and soldiers are in this state all the time, those type of messages have a clearer ability if we aren't afraid. For, if you would, a conversation about, hey, what's it like in heaven? What are you doing today? Does anybody have an answer for this or for that? That's where Clear, Calm, and Open is the trigger that we all use to be able to reach and be able to have these type of connections. Here's an interesting fact. Before the book was published and it was in final draft, I sent out a request to 80 people and said, hey, would you read the book before I publish it, because I want to make sure it works for other people, not just me. And 20 people wrote back and said either no or, Cliff, that's not the kind of thing I want to do. Of the 60 people who read it, or of the next 60 people, 59 read it. One person wouldn't read it because they thought, without reading it, maybe this is something that went against their religion.
That's right. That's a big barrier. Right.
Gosh, it is. Of the 59 people who read it, 5 people tried it, the passages, and tried the Clear, Calm, and Open method, and it worked for all 5 of them.
Did it really? That's quite a record.
Well, 2 of them were people who were psychic, and what I clarify by that is that their psychic abilities actually got better. So it became clear, the messages came clear, and they were able to see more things. Of the other 3 people, they were folks who before never had a connection, and they tried, and it worked. And so I didn't get the chance to ask all of them, what would that be, 54 people who read it, but I asked at least 30 or 40 of them, can you tell me what your connection experience was like? And they said, Cliff, I can't get into a Zen state. I think this is something that I'm a little bit afraid of, and that. And it's,
yes.
And so that's fine. But so many people who do read the book and don't have connections or don't try, they still have something in the book that just touches their heart. They'll say, Cliff, that one line where this was said or that was said, that just grabbed me. And it just told me I really do need to work on some of the damage that I've had in my life that I haven't been able to solve yet. So,
but we should emphasize the fact that if you're a very religious person, you're going to think this is of the devil.
Right.
Because Christianity is an extremely fear-based belief system. It has nothing to do with Jesus. I'm sad to say that. Mm-hmm. And it's fear-based, not love-based. So right. The last thing you want to do, I mean, you think you have a get-out-of-hell-free card, even though there is no hell. So the last thing you want to do is risk that get-out-of-hell-free card by trying to reach out on your own. But right. Christianity is dying, and what in its place will be a wonderful, truth-based relationship directly with Jesus, which is what we should have had all along. I mean, Jesus is right, Christianity is wrong. But that's just, so, you may not want to read it yet. Give yourself 5 or 7 years, and when you're open enough, then you'll be ready to do this. Have you gotten anything evidentiary this way? I mean, because that's what we always want to see with mediums who are communicating with the dead. Mm-hmm. Do you get generalities, or do you get anything specific from your loved ones?
Well, here's the deal. So if you tried your connection and you have one, it is something that you personally have. It's something that you see or hear. And actually, there's times that I can have familiar smells, or somebody might touch you. Yes. So from an individual basis, I can tell whether somebody's telling the truth or not. And in, I think it's about 95% of the cases, the folks who say, Cliff, I saw my child who passed away earlier, a young child. I saw my dad. I heard this, or I felt this, or I smelled his cigar or whatever. There, in my registering, I understand that 95% of those folks are telling the truth. Now,
isn't that beautiful, though? There's no comparable experience to having genuine contact with someone that you once thought was dead, right. Because that changes not just everything about your relationship with that person, but it changes your relationship with eternity, because suddenly you're in it. Your life is not going to end.
Exactly.
So let's talk about something you talk about, which is the law of action. We all know what the law of attraction is supposed to be, but what's the law of action?
Okay. So the law of action is that I have run across quite a few people who will be interested in the idea of communicating and having a connection and conversation with the other side. And I do want to emphasize the word with. I hear a lot of people say, you're not talking to the Jesus that I know. And I say, well, I don't talk to anyone. I talk with someone.
Conversation. Yes.
Yeah. A lot of people who talk to someone, it's one way. And so I do like the emphasis of talking with someone. And they might think, okay, well, I like the idea, but literally when it comes time to doing it, they just keep hoping and trusting and believing, but they don't take the action that it takes to ask the question or to get rid of the things that they need to do to become more clear, calm, and open. And that's what I'm referring to in the law of action, because this, if you would, so today there's a certain amount of messages that come through for all of us. And for us to be able to get clearer messages and more specific things like that, there's things that are in a way that we have been damaged by, that others have damaged us, or that we've damaged ourselves. And those things kind of need to be either resolved, healed, or put aside so that we have a more open channel. If we're so damaged that we're having to result to using poisons like drugs and alcohol, whatever it is like that, then it becomes more, if you would, difficult to be able to have connections. And so if we can work through those things, either through counseling or working on it ourselves, then we actually open ourselves up. We have more of us that is open. Our heart is more open. Our heart is more healed. And if we can clear our mind, then, and I know a lot of people that tell me, Cliff, there is no way
monkey mind.
Clear mind.
Yes. They call it monkey mind. There's something else important too that I'd like to mention here. I think the only thing that keeps us from wanting to have the kind of relationship with reality that Cliff now has allowed himself to have, and it's really a gift, but it's a gift you gave yourself. The only thing that really separates us from being able to do that is fear.
Correct.
Fear, Christian fear. Fear of the possibility that maybe this isn't all loving. I mean, fear is the lowest consciousness vibration. There is too much fear in the world right now. And I'm going to be talking about this more. I'm talking about it in my blog, but I've got to find the time to talk about it on air. But the only cure for that is to raise your consciousness vibration toward perfect love. The higher your vibration is, the less it is possible for you to feel fear. My book on that is, of course, The Fun of Growing Forever. And I recommend it, not because I wrote it, because, of course, I didn't write any of this stuff, but because it works. And it's really, without it, you wouldn't even like me. Between you and me, Cliff, you wouldn't even like me if I hadn't done those exercises. So this is another... You're so sweet. This is another thing that is important to understand if you really want to be a Voyager. And he's going to talk now about some of the things he's done and seen. If you want to do that, the first thing you've got to do is prepare yourself, as he talks about preparing yourself. And losing the fear by filling the space with love is the best thing you could do for yourself and for your whole life, and certainly for making this easier to do. So tell us what you've seen and done, because in the book, it's kind of unbelievable. I'd like to hear some of your stories.
Okay, good. And one of the things that we're going to just briefly talk about is that in The Fun of Dying, you do have it right that there is no hell. So it was so interesting in reading your book to go, I experienced that. And so the fact that there isn't this idea of being judged and having to go to hell, if more people would test that, they can keep their religious belief if they need to, but test it. Ask Jeshua, ask Jesus, is there a hell? And stay out of the way of what the answer is, and that relief would be tremendous. So some of the experiences that I've had was as a child. I think I was 6 years old. I had this is crazy. When I trick-or-treating, got lost, and for literally 5 minutes went blank. I went to the door, finally found it, and I was crying, and I said, Mama, Mother Mary brought me home. As in my 1994, I live here, and I across my fence. I'm fortunate enough to live where there's a park on the other side of it. And literally in my ears, not inside my mind, but my physical ears, they said, Cliff, do you think somebody can visit you here? And I turned around and there was nobody there. I have seen my grandmother. I have seen my friend Bill Tegans. I have seen my son physically during the day in a conscious state. I have seen other people's souls at death leave the body and ascend into the dimension of heaven. I have talked with. Here's an interesting one. I hope I'm not dragging this out too much. So this happens a lot. I'll be woken up, and I'll say I connect. And this particular time, I never say what it is. It's just kind of an open possibility. And I'm sitting in a cab with Albert Einstein. So I say, hi, Albert, how you doing? He said, I'm doing pretty good, Cliff. How are you? And I said, that's cool. And so we talk a little bit. And then I say, Albert, would you tell me explain to me the theory of relativity? And he said, sure, I'll be glad to. So a couple of minutes go